Hi everyone, thanks for coming today. My name is Matt. I work at the product marketing team at Actionstep. Today we are pleased to be co-hosting this webinar with Verlata Consulting, a CCP of Actionstep. Verlata is going to introduce to us Viewpoint, a Power BI reporting suite that uses your Actionstep data. I won't take up any more time though. I'll hand over to Rabina May of Verlata to dive on it. Thanks.
Thanks so much, Matt. So before we get into it, I thought I'd just share just a little bit about Verlata for those that we may not have worked with. So as Matt introduced us, we are a leading CCP with Verlata. We have been dealing with Actionstep for over 5 years now. So what that means is that we deal very closely with Actionstep in both migrations, implementations, and offering support. We have consultants across the east coast of Australia. So we normally have someone who can help you in your time zone. And many of us have worked in various law firms before we've come from Verlata. So we've got people who have been trainers, practice managers, IT managers, finance managers. And that just means, I think, that we have a little bit of empathy for what you go through when you're running a law firm. So what I do at Verlata is deal with taking your data and making it more beautiful and useful is how I like to describe it in a nutshell. And we're going to show you a little bit of that today. So my previous roles have included practice management and IT management. I've been in the legal tech field for more years than I like to say, but it's coming very close to 20. So that's just a little bit about me, but that's not what you've come here for. So let's dive in and have a look at Viewpoint. What I want you to leave with today is an understanding about business intelligence, which is what Viewpoint is. It's a set of business intelligence reports as distinct from basic reporting. You'll have a good overview of the Verlata Viewpoint reporting suite. You'll have an understanding of the gaps that Viewpoint might close for you. And we'll talk about how we implement Viewpoint with you. So you should have a very comprehensive understanding of this product by the end of this demonstration. And extra special just for you guys. I won't give you a set of steak knives, but I am going to show you a really cost-effective way of trialing Viewpoint and Power BI just for 1 month, and that might be of interest to you. As I said, I really want this to be a very helpful session for you. So what we're going to do is we'll take questions as we go. I'll also stop at certain points in the presentation to allow you to ask questions as well. And we have Kelly on as well from Verlata, and she's going to help me with that. So when we talk about business intelligence as opposed to reporting, what are we actually saying? So business intelligence is defined as leveraging software and services to transform data into actionable insights that inform a firm's business decisions. So we're not talking about just presenting data in a set of tables. We're talking about presenting it in a really visual, easy to understand way that is really aimed at the decision makers within your organization. And I think that'll become clearer as I demonstrate the product itself. So that is a bit separate from reporting itself. And obviously there are great reports within Actionstep. And I would encourage you before you consider a product like Power BI or Viewpoint, just to really understand what you get within the Actionstep reports themselves and the custom list views. I'm just going to flick over to the Actionstep support site here. So if you haven't already, I'd really encourage you to have a look at the reporting documentation in here so that you can understand what's available for you right now. That will allow you to see whether you have any gaps and whether or not this product I'm going to show you now is going to be able to bridge those gaps for you. It's also, I think, important to understand that the way that Actionstep creates some of the formulas within their reports is a little bit different to the way we do them in Viewpoint, and I'm going to point those out to you as we go. All right. So as I said, I just like people to be really aware of the reports that are within Actionstep and the ways that you can customize those. And then we can also see where Viewpoint just fits in the infrastructure with supporting those reports. So our clients that use Viewpoint use them as an adjunct to the reporting in Actionstep. They certainly don't use them as a replacement to the reporting in Actionstep. Okay, so let's get to what you've come for, which is an actual tour of Viewpoint itself. Okay, so Viewpoint is built on a Microsoft platform called Power BI, and I'll talk a little bit about that later. What you just need to know at the moment is this is how it looks. So you receive a link to what Power BI calls an application, and then this information that I'm going to show you is connected to your data. So anyone with the link that we send through to you, it'll look a bit like this. That's a bit unwieldy, so people tend to just create a desktop or a browser shortcut to it. And anyone with that link can have a look at this data as long as they have a Power BI license and as long as they are given access to the application. So we start off with the dashboards, and I'm just going to flick to the current one. So as a default, what you see when you first come into your application is a dashboard. And dashboards in Power BI are a collection of visuals from various reports that give you a high level view of what's happening in your firm. So we can see from this dashboard here that we can have an understanding of how fees are billed against budget month to date, how we're going year to date, what the value of our time recorded looks like, how we're going with our new files being opened, how we're going with our fees billed against budget, where our new files are being opened, where our fees are being billed, and then we have a couple of static measures as well. So around what age debtors are, so that's obviously just a point in time measure. WIP, which is similar. And then we also have some information about write-offs. And I'll go into a little more detail about write-offs when we look at that particular report, because write-offs mean slightly different, something slightly different in Viewpoint to what they do in Actionstep. Now, this report here, as I said, is current as of the current financial year. So what it looks like with a little more data in it, so I'll just give you what it looks like in the financial year of 2020, just so you can see it in a little bit more detail. So this is what it would look like at the end of a financial year, just so you can see how the graphs look. So as I said, each of these actually link to a report, and you can see the reports listed here on the left. And I'm going to take some time to go through each of those reports just to show you what they do. I can get to those reports either by navigating down the left here, or I could click on any of these tiles on my dashboard. As I said before, the point of a dashboard is that you have a high level view of what's going on in your firm with the ability to then drill through. So this is one of the key differences between a business intelligence tool as opposed to just a reporting tool. The idea is that you start at a high level, you can identify anything that's a worry or anything you want to investigate further, and then drill down into it. In more traditional reporting based around tables, what tends to occur is you sort of have to go to that drill down first. Okay, so say I'm the managing partner of this firm, and this firm's clearly not doing all that well. So this is obviously test data, and it's on purpose not looking great, just so that we can demonstrate a few things through this demonstration. Okay, one of the things I'm going to look at here and decide I'm quite concerned about is our level of debtors, and in particular how old these debtors are. So I'm looking through all these statistics, some of which are quite worrying, and I'm finding this the most worrying. I'm going to click through on this report, or this tile here, through to the report from which it originated, which brings me to the debtors analysis report. The way that reports work within Power BI is that each of these visuals actually interact with one another. So if I was to click on the data bar here, which is indicating how much of my debtors is 120 plus days old, you are going to see that the graphs surrounding it are going to change contextually. So I've clicked on that, and you would have seen the graphs around it change. This is now only showing me 120 days plus, and this graph here, which is showing my total debtors by responsible fee earner, is now reflecting the fact that I've chosen this 120 days. So I'm just going to hover over Kelly's information here, and you can see that her outstanding balance is about 286 grand, and of that, 279 grand belongs to that 120 days. So it enables you basically to filter different visuals using each other. So that's potentially interesting, but what I really want to know is, okay, well, what are the invoices that are making up this age debtors total? So let me right click into that, and I'm going to drill through into the detail. And what this is going to show me, it's going to show me the actual invoices that make up that amount. So this is now where we've really drilled through to the detail that you would expect in a more traditional reporting system. So once I'm in here, I can use these different columns to sort. So I might want to sort on client. You can see this has changed. What I'm more likely to want to sort on, obviously, is balance. So if I click on this, it's going to show me, okay, so a great deal of this debt is belonging to this particular matter here. I might now go into Actionstep, look into that a little further, and think about meeting the fee earner that's responsible for that. You've also got over here some more filtering options. Now, these are called slices in Power BI, just in case you hear that terminology. And maybe I want to understand which of these belong to Steve, because I know that he had quite a lot of them when I looked at that report before. So I'm just going to click Steve here. And it's just going to show me the debtors that belong to Steve within that 120 days. If at any point I'm a little bit confused as to which filters I have applied, and that can happen, you can always hover over the top here and you can click on this filter button here, and it's going to tell you exactly what filters are applied. I can click on this button here and it's just going to take me back to the report from which I drilled through. So your debtors analysis is showing you your debtors as they exist at this point in time, and how they are aging and to whom they belong to. I'm going to go through how Viewpoint actually takes data from Actionstep, but it is worth noting that data within Viewpoint, and indeed most custom reports, will only be current as of the previous close of business. That just has to do with when the data is actually exported and refreshed. Okay. So we had a look at debtors in quite a bit of detail. Let's have a look at some of the other reports that we have access to in Viewpoint. Let's have a look at daily time recording. So the point of this report, this is a fairly new one, and this came through in order to help firms with a little more visibility around how they were managing during our work from home experiences with COVID. So this just gives a little more transparency into how people are recording their time. And you can do it at quite a granular level. You can go through fee earner, at month, and importantly, week beginning as well. Okay, so how would this work in practice? So we can look here and you see all this red. That indicates that these people have not made their budgets in terms of their billable time. These budgets come from the KPI area within Actionstep. Just pop over to here so you understand where that comes from. So in an accounting, in accounts and KPIs, you can set budgets. And this is where that information is being drawn into Viewpoint. Now, I might look through this information here and have a look at Disher and realize, okay, so we weren't quite making budget. And then on Wednesday, suddenly we've got 23.6 hours. What's happened there? Again, I can drill through so I can have a look at a little more detail. So this is going to give me what she recorded on this Wednesday. I'm able to have a look at it in a graphical format in terms of her full hours recorded, her billable hours, her budget, and then these non-chargeable hours. And I can actually see what her time cards were made up of over here. So again, it's this concept of having quite a high level report, which you can then investigate deeper into. Let's have a look at fees billed. So fees billed has two parts to its report. We can look at fees billed in the context of our fee earners, and we can have a look at fees billed in terms of the clients and matters. Now, Alicia has asked whether Viewpoint can use the data from custom data fields to create the tables and graphs. Viewpoint doesn't. Viewpoint is a set of reports which we have created. It's basically an off-the-shelf product. However, we can definitely create custom reports, and I'll go through a little bit about custom reports towards the end, just in case Viewpoint doesn't hit all the points you need it to. And in those custom reports, we can access the custom data fields, and we have certainly done that for clients. In a fees build, we have how we're going month to date, year to date, how our fee earners are travelling, what we're looking at against budget, and the percentage of budget for fee earner down here. We can have a look at this data also from a clients and matters perspective and understand, okay, well, where are our biggest practice areas? Who are our top clients? And sorry, I'm just moving this little WebEx file. And how we're going with our fees billed per matter. So I might want to have a look further into, okay, employment law is looking like a fairly large part of our practice. And I can have a look and realize, oh, okay, well, most of that has come just from one particular client and matter. I can clear that filter by clicking on this again. Let's pop into file opening. So this will obviously give you an idea of how work is traveling through your firm. And again, you can sort of see the trends as to where things are busy, where things slow down, which practice areas have what matters being opened, and then you actually have a matter list as well. So you can have a look and decide, okay, I'd like to know how many we actually opened in January. I want to see the details of that. Oh, we didn't open any in January. April. Okay, and then we can have an idea of how many we opened in April. I could have also done that by clicking on this here. And had I paid more attention, I would have realized that we didn't open anything in January over here. So productivity is at a higher level than what we saw in daily time recording. And this is really about the value of time that's being recorded per month. So the value of your billable hours. You can have a look at what the non-billable hours are as opposed to the billable hours, understand what your utilization rates are, and how close we are to budget. So you'll notice these gauges are used fairly often throughout the reports. It just gives a nice visual so that people understand what they're tracking towards in terms of a target. We can then look in a little more detail as to how people are going against their budgets and what the variances are there. We can also have a look at productivity from the perspective of clients and matters, understanding, okay, what are the actual hours that we worked? What are the billable hours that we worked? And how much is that in terms of a dollar amount? So I might want to know, okay, for our ABC company here, all right, so our actual hours are 91.50, our billable hours are 119.9, and this is our billable amount, so we feel pretty happy about this particular client. Onto WIP, which is a little bit similar to debtors in terms of it being a point in time measure. So this gives us an idea of what our total WIP is, and then again, broken down into those aged buckets we saw before. Also looking at how we're traveling with what WIP we're carrying per practice area here. We can also look at our total WIP by fee earner. Have a look at Verlata support and realize that's quite high, and then we can see some more details about that. We can drill through to the actual detail of that WIP as well, and just understand how it's made up for that particular fee earner. Again, if you're in a drill through and you're not entirely sure what filters have been applied from that drill through, you can hover over your filter here and understand, okay, I'm looking at this from timekeepers for Verlata support. And you'll notice when I drop down here, all you'll see is Verlata support because it's taking that drill through from the previous screen. Another nice thing that particularly people who work in accounts like is the ease at which this can export to Excel. So if I just click on my more options here, I can export that data. And that's going to export out for me. Just give a moment. A nice Excel spreadsheet. It's just taking a moment to load. All right, there we go. Obviously, that's much quicker when you're actually doing it. So it means that you can start then and playing with this data in much the same way you can when you export your reports out of Actionstep itself. Last but not least, let's just have a quick look at write-offs. Now, write-offs in terms of how we talk about them in Viewpoint is the difference between the billable amount attributed to the time cards and what you've actually invoiced on those time cards. So the write-off really refers to the time written off. Write-offs within Actionstep, within the reports there, more talk about the write-offs if you're not integrated with Xero, in which case you can't do them in any case, but the write-offs as against invoices themselves after they've been created. So we do have a lot of clients that want to know, okay, well, what was the actual value of time and what did we actually end up invoicing? So it's particularly helpful if you have fixed fees to understand whether or not you've actually had a write up or a write down in that situation. Obviously helpful for if you have younger lawyers who might be taking a little bit longer on things than you feel it comfortable invoicing the client, and then being able to extrapolate that data and know where you might have to spend a little bit of time on training. So all those sort of things make it quite useful to understand what you're actually invoicing as opposed to the billable amount of what you're actually invoicing. And that's really where write-offs are centered in Viewpoint. So you can see how you're traveling over a period of time, where your largest write-offs are, what's happening in each of the practice areas. So we can see here that conveyancing's doing quite a lot of write-offs. So I might want to have a look at that and look further into what's happening there. And I'm concerned about this 19K, which is actually a write-up, I believe. I'm going to drill through into the detail and have a further look at what went on there. In terms of understanding exactly how these reports work and what you can do with them, there is a help and user manual. And what this does is it goes through each report and how you can use it, which is helpful. But I think the most helpful thing we have in here is a list of how the formulas themselves are actually created. So if you were to have a look at Viewpoint and decide, okay, that's interesting for me, I think that would be quite valuable. However, we do our WIP slightly differently. So the WIP here is the billable amount that has not been billed or written off and does not include draft invoices, includes non-active or closed matters with WIP. Now you might say, actually, I don't want the non-active or closed matters. I just want active matters contributing to our WIP. So we can make those small changes as part of the setup fee. And if you're ever stuck, obviously, that's quite helpful to refer to. So that is what Viewpoint looks like. Hopefully that's given you a fairly in-depth understanding of how it works and what it can do. I'm just going to flick back to the PowerPoint now. I'm just going to stop here and see if anyone has any extra questions. Oh, hang on. Does Viewpoint consider credits? Oh. Does Viewpoint consider credits and discounts as write-offs too? The result is net fees billed after factoring in credits or discounts. We do write-offs as credits since we use Xero, and Xero does not support write-offs. Not within Viewpoint, Chalitha. So within Viewpoint, when we're talking about write-offs, we're really talking about it prior to the point of invoicing. I understand where you're coming from because of the way that Xero works and the fact that you do use credits within Xero. I'm not as across Xero as others on our team are. However, I could definitely work with others. And if that was something that you wanted to explore, we could do it, but I believe it would be within a custom report. Just checking if there's any other questions. Just give you guys a moment. Okay, we will move on. Okay, so why would you use Viewpoint? So it does give you that macro higher level view of firm metrics more so than Actionstep does. Some of our clients use it because otherwise they would have to create a number of different reports in Actionstep and put them together to get the same kind of view. Others like that ability to start at a high level and then drill through into the details. As you saw, it's pretty easy to use. So Power BI is a Microsoft product. It looks, behaves, feels like other Microsoft products. So I think people tend to be able to use it pretty easily straight out of the box. You can delve further, as I showed you a few little things in terms of applying the slices and looking at the filters and exporting to Excel. And certainly if you're more of a data analyst position in your firm, we can go into some further detail about how you can go deeper with that data. But for decision makers in the firm who just really quickly want to be able to use the reports, it really does offer that with very little downtime involved in training people on how to use it. As I showed you, the formulas are really transparent and we can alter them. There's a bit of a fine line where it becomes a custom report rather than Viewpoint. But if you're looking at the way that we calculate some things and you don't want to include a certain billing behavior, or you do want to include a certain billing behavior, that can certainly be done. The reports are really designed for the decision makers in the firm. I know, as in my previous roles, I was often asked, can I just have a one pager on this to understand what's going on? And Power BI really makes that a little bit easier to do that. You can also export these things out to PowerPoint straight from the application itself. So it makes it really easy to do those presentations that you might need to do to partnerships and boards. It's secured at an application level. So this is important to understand from a security perspective. So what that means is you let us know, okay, I want this person and this person to have access to Viewpoint. They are then going to be able to see all the data within Actionstep because we're exporting it out basically as an admin user. So that means that even if there were restricted matters that they could not see within Actionstep itself, they are going to come out into those reports. The matter name and the file reference do remain obscured, so you just see restricted. However, it does mean that you have the holistic view of all the financials, which you might not if you didn't have access to restricted matters within Actionstep itself. And as I just said, you've got exports to PDF, Excel, and PowerPoint all available. Obviously, export to PDF and Excel is available from some of the Actionstep reports as well, but the PowerPoint one is quite helpful for people. Some other benefits are just that dynamic visualization with that ability to deep dive. The fact that it pulls data straight from your action step, so you're not having to, I've definitely worked in firms before where I've had to run several different reports. You pop them all into Excel, you try and figure out the relationships in Excel, and then you pop something out the other side. So it just really limits the need to do that. And also because Actionstep is a cloud product, it's obviously not quite as easy to get to the data as it might be on an on-prem solution. So it solves both of those issues. And we've talked about how it's easy to use and familiar. I think it saves a lot of time just through those really accessible reports immediately available with no extra edits necessary. You're not having the managing partner asking you to prepare a report that you really don't have time necessarily to do. They can go in and self-service and just find that themselves. It means we're spending a whole lot less time on the creation and the mucking around with the data. Rather than spending our time on that, we can actually analyze the data and take advantage of those insights. So it can save money just through that increased transparency into your data. It should allow for more effective data whip, billing, file, and performance management. And I think it does provide that security and comfort. Those financial metrics are just there at your fingertips. It's really easy to get to. If you're in the middle of a partners meeting and someone wants to know something, you can quickly go into Viewpoint and understand the particular metric they might be asking about. Okay, so for the technically minded amongst us, I'm sure you're wondering how this actually all works in practicality. So within Actionstep itself, there is an overnight job that runs if you ask for that service to be set up. So it basically pulls not a complete backup, but a cut down backup of your data, particularly in the financial area, and runs that overnight. That then comes into a Microsoft Azure hosted database. Power BI cannot automatically connect to Actionstep. It needs this middle piece. It needs to connect to a database in this instance. So we have a database that hosts the data that we're getting from this overnight export. So we push that to that database in the morning. Then early in the morning, Power BI itself refreshes itself against that data set, and that's how we end up having this data correct as of the previous close of business. Is there any questions around that? I'll just wait a moment. Okay, that seems to be quite clear. If anyone wants to, just touch base and ask about anything, of course, please feel free to do that. I'll have my email at the end of this slide. Okay, so what do you need to make this all work? So Actionstep, you obviously all have, so you've ticked to that box. You also need Power BI Pro licenses for each person accessing that application link. If you export things out to PDF or you take a copy of them, obviously the people that are accessing that don't need a license. That's just basically a picture, I guess, of the data itself. But anyone who actually needs to interact with those reports does need a Power BI Pro license. So a Power BI Pro license is available from Microsoft. They're currently $13.70 per person per month. You organise that with your IT department. Having said that, there is a 2-month free trial of Power BI Pro. So if this is something that you're considering but you don't necessarily want to commit to until you've had a bit of a play, you could go down that route. If you happen to have Office 365 E5, which is an enterprise version of Office 365, you'll have Power BI Pro licenses already. It's some firms have that, but we find most don't. It's a much more comprehensive kind of tier of Office 365 licensing. If you don't use Office 365, that's fine. You can still set up an Office 365 user and attach that to a Power BI Pro license. So it doesn't preclude you from using it just because you might not have Office 365. We just need to do some extra setup with you to ensure that works. Okay, so I haven't had too many questions come through. I am checking regularly. So here's a couple that we have been asked over the last little while. So can this be used in countries other than Australia? Yes, we would have to do some small alterations, obviously, to the financial year and the date format, but it's really flexible. And obviously being in the cloud is one of the benefits of that, is that we can do a lot with things in all sorts of different jurisdictions. So just confirming about those times that we talked about. Are there any other costs other than the Power BI licenses? Yes, there are, Michael. I will go through those towards the end of the slides. So the backup is run overnight by Actionstep at, I believe, around midnight. The database that Power BI pulls from, so that is your database that we talked about, is backed up at about 5 a.m. And then the Power BI reports refresh at around 6 a.m. So those are sort of a bit fuzzy numbers. Those are what we tend to try and aim towards. It does depend a little bit about the size of the database as to whether or not we can do that. However, we definitely aim to have your data up and running from the previous day, by opening of business. So is there a way to get completely up-to-date data? Not through Viewpoint. We have done some custom reports where we work with some data live through APIs. But to be honest, most clients just rely on the Actionsteps reports themselves for up-to-minute reporting. So if you need to know something, I need to know, what this looks like right at this very second, we would generally encourage clients just to use Actionstep for that. So can I cancel Viewpoint? So you can cancel it at any time and the subscription will just cease at the end of the month. And do I really need Power BI licenses for all my users? Anyone who is wanting to access that application link will need a license. There really isn't any way around that particular cost. So in terms of how we then work with you, so if you've had a look at this and you decide that Viewpoint is something you'd like to explore further within your firm, you can contact us for a more in-depth demo, and maybe you've had some questions after you see this that you didn't think to ask now, or you would prefer to have a one-on-one conversation, we can definitely do that. Then we'll check through those formulas and make sure that they suit the way your firm works. And if there are just some simple changes in there, then we can include that as part of setup costs. You let us know which users require access, and then you'll arrange Power BI Pro licenses for those users. and then you'll ask Actionstep to set up your overnight export. So those are the things that we basically ask you to do. Then what we do on the other side is we connect your Actionstep data to Viewpoint, and we set up that regular sync that I went through with the way that it works. We set up your Viewpoint application, and we send the users you've selected a link to the app. Viewpoint includes that support manual that I went through, but if you would like further training for any of your team, we can provide that at a fixed fee as well. So pricing. Michael didn't answer your question. Sorry, it took a little while to get here. So the pricing is $249 per month per firm. So it's per firm cost. So you can have as many users as you have Power BI licenses for them. And so what does that actually include? So there's a $150 reporting suite fee. So that gives you access to those reports. It also covers the cost of hosting and maintaining that Azure database, that bit that we described that sits in the middle. That daily upload of the Actionstep export into the Azure database and the maintenance of that. If there are any issues, we resolve those. It covers basic support, so you can email and ask how to do things, and any dashboard updates that may need to occur at the financial year change. That also includes the $99 Actionstep data export fee, and Actionstep will invoice you that. On Viewpoint, on the marketplace, you can have a look at it there, and we just wanted to include that all within one price so that you could understand how that impacts your firm. Just a very small note, it doesn't affect most people, but for some firms that have absolutely huge databases, we just need to scope that. It just means that the cost of hosting with Azure can go up, and if you're in that band, we scope that with you, and obviously we let you know before we move any further. There is an $800 one-off setup fee. There is a fair bit of work involved with actually setting this all up for you. So it includes the setup of the Azure database, that connection to the Azure database. We set up your Viewpoint application. We do those small changes to accommodate any differences in those formulas. We connect your Azure database to your Viewpoint application, set up your users, and then we do an audit and balance just to make sure that the data is coming across correctly from Actionstep. All right, now there was a question before, obviously, about custom reporting, about the custom data fields. So we recognize that Viewpoint isn't for everybody. The way that Viewpoint came about was we were doing a lot of custom reports for our clients, and we noticed that there were certain things that nearly everybody wanted. So that's where the Viewpoint suite came from. However, we absolutely understand that there are different horses for different courses, and part of the beauty of Power BI is how flexible and customizable it is. So we do offer custom reporting, and if you'd like to learn a little bit more about custom reporting and what we can do with that, I'd encourage you to attend our webinar on the 8th of September, and the link is in the slide notes there. I'm also currently publishing out a blog series about dancing with data, and that goes through a number of the cool things you can do with custom reporting. And that does include things like bringing in data from Google Analytics or different project management tools that you might be using, and using Power BI to really have that complete overall view of a lot of the things that you are doing. So obviously, if you want some more information, either on custom reporting or Viewpoint itself, please do not hesitate to contact me. If you have a closer relationship with Tyler and you'd like to contact him and ask him some questions, I know that he would be perfectly fine with that. You can also have a little bit more of a look at Viewpoint just on our website. This will come up okay. So if you just go to verlata.com, if you go into Services, Business Intelligence and Power BI, you can then have a look at Viewpoint through here. And that will go through what we've gone through here basically. And it also has a live interactive sample just with the file openings report. So, excuse me, that gives you an opportunity then to actually play with the data in a live way. Now, people sometimes see this and then say, aha, you've solved our Power BI licensing problem there. We'll just publish it this way. This data is test data, so we don't mind it being available to all and sundry on the internet. You may be more concerned about your financial data being available to all and sundry on the internet, and that is what this does. This can be indexed by Google and all sorts, so it's definitely not something you want to do with your sensitive data. Okay, so that brings me to an end of demonstrating Viewpoint. I hope you found that useful. And if it is something obviously you're interested in, please do come in contact. So thank you all so much for your time. I really do appreciate it. Get in contact if you've got any questions, and enjoy the rest of your week.